Okay, welcome to another episode of ISIRKA. Today I have a special guest with me in person. magacaaga dadka u sheeg.
Assalamu alaikum. Magacaygu waa SayidCali Ismail.
And okay, so Saeed, so why Said instead of Saeed? Or is there a unique story behind that?
Ma magaca aabahay bay siiyay laakiin waa magaca Soomaalidu ku yiri baan filay badanka inta lagu yeeraaba ma badna. oo intan korey ma arkin magaca SayidCali dad badan lagu yeeray laakiin waxaan arkay Cabdiye fara badan Maxamed fara badan Jaac fara badan marka waalidkeen dib u noqdo su'aasha weydiiyay.
So basically, you are a unique person with a unique story and an amazing story, and I'm so glad to welcome you to this podcast. Welcome to ISIRKA. My name is Amina Isir, and join me as I take you on a journey to explore identity, culture, and belonging. Take a seat as I take you through time, space, and various perspectives of cultural identity. Stay tuned to see where the journey will take us today.
Welcome to another episode of ISIRKA. Today I have with me a special guest live in person. So do it.
Mahasante, my name is SayidCali Ahmed. I'm really happy to be here with you, Isir.
And we are live in where? Where are we? For those who don't know,
we're here at Princeton University in New Jersey.
Hey, you have a Princeton ID? I have a Princeton ID, but you're the one who's here as a student. So tell us what you're doing here.
So currently, right now, we're in a summer break, but I'm attending a summer program at Princeton University's graduate school, a School of Public Policy and International Affairs.
And where did your journey start from?
So I was born and raised in Hargeisa.
Gang.
Hargeisa, big city boy, Hargeisa. Sometimes they say Awlad al-Asima.
Yeah.
And then I was born and raised in Hargeisa. I grew up a lot in Hargeisa. I spent most of my time in Hargeisa. And then after 8th grade, after I finished 8th grade elementary back home, that is when a lot of changes started in my life. That's when I started attending Abaarso School of Science and Technology in Somaliland.
So for those who don't know Abaarso, tell them a little bit about Abaarso.
Abaarso is a boarding school located 30 minutes away from Hargeisa. Abaarso has both, it started from 7th grade, 8th grade, and then it has a high school, like from, as the way you like to say, 9th grade till 12th grade, or Form 1 till Form 4. So I spent Abaarso, and at that time, I started attending Abaarso back in 2013. And by the way, if you want to get into Abaarso School, since I have a lot of knowledge as a student and so as a staff member who used to work at Abaarso, we can talk about that later. Usually, if you want to, the way they do things is a little bit different. In order for you to become a Abaarso student, you have to take an entrance exam. And that usually is a nationwide entrance exam. And guess how many seats you're competing with? 50 seats out of the whole country.
Wow.
So luckily at that time in my class, I was the only student who came from a public school.
Wow.
And alhamdulillah, I was able to get admitted to Abaarso School. I spent my first 9th grade and then 10th grade, or how other people like to say, Form 1, Form 2. And then sometime around the end of my junior year, 11th grade, I was able to come to the U.S. and finish the rest of my high school, in a high school located in Fort Wayne, Indiana, USA.
Oh, so then what was that journey like? You're 16 years old. Were you like coming to America by yourself? And to go to high school nonetheless. Like high school is really hard in the States. Not academically, but socially.
I agree with you. Back in 2016, and guess what? That was the first time I even left Hargeisa.
Wow, so you never went to like Djibouti, anywhere close?
Anywhere close. Even at that time, I haven't even been to other cities in the nation.
Oh, wow.
I never been to Ergaba at that time, Bur'o.
Boroma?
I've been to Boroma, but like other farther side of the country.
Wow.
I was just
into the other say like what the wow.
Actually, I even had like a hard time of navigating through that international traveling, and you can just imagine it's just a kid who's leaving home the first time.
Wow.
And I started from a long distance,
Yeah.
There was a big challenge at that time, and my mom was even for me, when I heard about when the school told me, hey, you get into the school from the US, I couldn't even believe. Like literally, I even kept that to myself till I went to Djibouti to get the visa, because I was like, this doesn't seem real to me.
Wow.
So I let my mom know like a couple weeks before my departure. I was like, hey, Hoyo, I get an accept letter from high school located in America.
Wow.
So I will be leaving soon. That was the only time I told her, because other than that was like, don't tell her otherwise, in case if things doesn't work out, because it seemed unreal to me,
Yeah.
Like,
how did she react though when she found out you were leaving?
Honestly, my mom, she kept asking me a lot of questions, She was like, are you sure? Like, wili ma dhammayni iskuulkii sanad iyo bar kalaa kuu harsan, Maraykan waa dalkii fogaa, you know how people back home, like, especially markaad hooyadaa tahay, waalidaa tahay. And my mom and I, we have a really, really great connection, because Allah naxariista, my dad passed away 2009, and then she was also with me at the first day when I was going to that boarding school. I remember the conversation we had, So my mom and I, we really, even today, I call her every Saturday night.
Yeah.
It's become like a tradition for us just to catch up and what happened that week,
Yeah.
So I told her about the school, but my mom, alhamdulillah, she used to keep in touch and keep up with, how I'm doing academically. So academically, she wasn't surprised that I was able to get into school in America. She was like, I knew you were capable of that, but she was like, are you ready though for the experience? Because she was like, you never been to Ethiopia, you never been to Kenya, you never been to another place in Africa,
Yeah.
And now you're starting your journey from a long distance. But alhamdulillah, it turned out good, I'm not gonna lie to you, but it was hard at the first time, That was the first time I heard about homesick, dealing with the winter weather in the U.S. I even had a hard time adjusting to food in the U.S. with the first few weeks. I was like, what type of food is this?
So nobody's in Hilib.
Yep. And the other strange thing about that city I was living in Indiana was it's called Fort Wayne, Indiana. So it's like 30 minutes away from Indianapolis. And guess what? There were no Somalis at all.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And
were there any black people though, or like minorities?
A little bit, but not a lot. And then when people hear about you're from Africa, you just know the stereotypes here in the US. They will ask you, tell us, what is life back home? And because a lot of them, like, they haven't even met someone in person who's from Africa or, Somaliland. And another thing was, when if I tell people, hey, I'm from Somaliland, they will tell you, like, tell us more about it, because we don't know where it is. So I have to get into another class, History 101.
We're not Somalia, we gained to defend it. But what did being in Indianapolis and being in this new environment, what did it teach you about life and how to adapt to your environment?
One thing, it taught me a lot of things, and at that time you can just imagine 17, 18 years old Somali kid. If a lot of people back home can consider you, mature enough, but just at this 17 or 18, navigating through a different country, a new place, it really taught me, if you want other people to accept you who you are, you have to accept yourself. Be who you are, like be proud of who you are, but if you try to fit in, that doesn't work out, like, and I really love that part about me. I was like, I want to stay unique. And ask me why am I different from you. But as we know here in the US or a lot of Western world, like if they see you, that you look like them or act like them, they will say to you, I have nothing more to ask about you because we act the same way. But when they see you, like praying 5 times a day, not eating pork or not doing certain things they do, they will say, I really want to know more about you. But when they see you doing the same ordinary things they do, they will say like, we're just the same. But I was like, I said, Somali waxay tiraahdaa meel ila leh haddaad tagto ishaa la iska daa laakiin anigu taa ma aaminsanayn. I said I want to keep both of my eyes, and I will tell people why I have 2 eyes if they only have one. Alhamdulillah, I had a wonderful time in Indiana. I learned a lot. I grew up both as a person, physically, mentally, and also academically. And then after early 2017, I asked myself, I could have gone to college, but I said, am I ready to go to college? Which is, I decided to go back to Somaliland. And I started working with Abaarso School, not as a student at this time, but as a staff member. And at the young age, even at that time when we went back to early 2017, I took a lot of responsibilities, I was as a headmaster assistant Abaarso School, I was the one. A lot of times I have been, the bridge between the administration, translating things for the parents, working with the teachers, helping them with all of the logistics if they need help with. And at the same time, I was also working closely with the students, Some of them, like, whether it is about, like, helping them get tutoring sessions or help them, like, and, adapt the new environment of a lot of kids, even especially about 7th and 8th graders, they're so young. And some of them, like, it was their first time leaving home as well. So, like, you can just imagine a kid who is in a boarding school, who is going to 7th grade. So, like, a lot of them are, like, you can tell they weren't ready to be in a boarding school. But I was like their big brother for them, who is helping them, working with them, teaching them, like, how to do the right thing is at the young age. Alhamdulillah, I had a great time working at Abaarso School. And then early 2019.
Wait, before you talk about leaving, so what other type of things did you do at Abaarso that really changed how, because at Abaarso there's a lot of foreign staff that work there, right? The teachers usually come from the West.
Yep.
So what difference did it make that a Somali who was an alum of the school that was able to study abroad in the United States and was coming back and helping and mentoring young Somali students who were pretty much probably like you were a couple years ago. What difference did that make, and how did that inform some of the decisions and policies that you enacted?
Honestly, that's a good question. Like, working at Abaarso School and, and being part of the administration, whenever I see those students, I just see myself, my young self at that time. So, like, I had one of the best experience I had was, like, I was able to see things from both sides, from being a student at Abaarso School, and at the same time, what life looks like sitting on the table, where sometimes bigger decisions were taking place. So, so I was able to relate to the student more than anybody else within that campus. Like, when I see someone making a mistake, I'm like, yes, that was me. And one thing I used to do a lot was, my goal was, when I was coming to Abaarso as a staff member was, how can we lower and how can we, decrease the number of students who are getting expelled or suspended and help them, grow up intellectually. So sometimes I don't really believe punishment changes a student, but I believe sitting with them and asking them and understanding why the student did what they did is one of the effective ways if you want to help a student grow up. So what I did a lot was mentoring. I built a great connection with this student, and I become like a good source for them where they can open up to talk to. Sometimes, I had a student who was saying, I'm having a hard time, understanding the way this teacher teaches class. So I used to ask them, okay, I used to tell them, share with them what I used to do when I was at Abaarso student. So when I have that kind of scenario as well, say, hey, I had that situation as well, and I have done this and this. Maybe try this; it may work out for you. Or if I see another student having a hard time, I will say, have you talked to the teacher? Maybe if you sit with them, if you go to their office hour and sit with them, you might be able to figure things out.
So how did that change? Because is that something that's normally done within Somali society? It's always like, you just have to listen to SayidCali. You don't, like, sit and have conversations with them like that. So did that change? Was that changing the cultural norms for these students?
Yeah, it was. For example, like, a lot of them will say too, especially for the young kids who are 7th graders, 8th graders, they will say to you, actually, nobody ever asked me what I did. But for you ask me, okay, tell me, what was the reason behind the way you acted today? And when I'm asking that student, they know that I truly care about, not just asking them, like, rhetorically, but I really want to know where you're coming from, And when I hear the student from their perspective, I tell them, like, as a big brother, okay, hey, I understand maybe you did this out of frustration. Next time, it will be a better idea if you don't react with the same way. Give yourself time, talk to me or talk to another elder person, another older student that you might feel, happy talking with. And a lot of students really enjoy it, and even for me too, like, I really love it, and it actually made me fall in love again, being part of the academic institutions, which I hope in the future to continue this journey of being part of, the academia or being part of the education institutions whether want to be a teacher or a professor, God knows, alhamdulillah, but wherever the future takes, I see myself a lot. I truly enjoy a lot being part of the academic areas as well.
What is it about academia in particular, as opposed to just being like, because you can still mentor students through sports, you know, and like community engagement. So what is it about academia or higher education that kind of, you know, allows all of those kind of like things to fulfill you?
I think this journey of me falling in love a lot being part of the academic it started when I attended Abaarso School as a 9th grade. You know, I spent a lot of time, you know, reading and reading. Some people do reading like to do the what is required, but for me, reading was kind of like my own way of escaping from the, you know, surrounding area.
Yes.
It used to help me like feel free and become part of a world that I wasn't being able to reach out physically, but I was able to reach out mentally and, you know, entertain and like join their group, which I feel like, you know, education or being part of academic is, you know, it helps a lot. It helps you as a person grow a lot, you know, because you are learning and hearing a lot of people's experiences through a couple of pages that you haven't been able to meet with them.
Yeah.
You know, which I always tell people like, hey, you know, pick a book if you can, you know, because you will get the chance to talk to somebody that you might never get the chance to meet with.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I always believe in, the education. It's just a great way of connecting, you know. This is a beautiful place. It's a respectful place to meet and connect as well.
I feel the same way about reading. And I don't read as much anymore, but I think like even in the little time that I've known you, it's still when you get to talk to different kinds of people, you still learn. And you're somebody who you definitely can tell that you're putting into action everything that you've learned or that you've read. So how in kind of navigating between being Somaliland and America are two very different types of societies.
True.
And you can navigate both. So speak a little bit about that.
This actually speaks of my experience of why, you know, I want to pursue a career of public policy and higher education, you know. And the reason is, you know, people who work UNESCO, United Nations Education, Culture and Society, are mainly people from the Western world. They never get the chance to become a student from Africa and also from the Western world. But for me, I was able to be a student when it's from a country in Africa, and at the same time step out from that system and look things from a different perspective. And I consider myself as someone who could see the gap between both of them. You know, like sometimes, like even today, even then we are in here one of the best institutions in America. Princeton University is considered like also part of the top Ivy League schools, you know. Like even today we're working here in Princeton might not work another university located in Africa, which is why I always say every society needs its own story. You have to, if you want to consider a country's education system, you have to study them in their own way. Which is why even the Somali community, you know, when I came to Somaliland, when I came from Somaliland, I came to the U.S., like, I had to make a lot of adjustments. You know, it is about, whether it's about food, people, you know, even the environment itself, you know. And another thing that we could talk about this is, you know, here in the U.S., a lot of schools, they have, you know, college counselor, you know, mentors, you know, peer health counselors, so that in case if you want to talk to somebody, you know, you can go and talk to them, and it's a normal thing. Actually, it really surprised me, you know. It kind of goes back to my high school when I was in Indiana, you know. This counselor from my school reached out to me, and he said to me, hey, it was during the winter, and we usually call the, you know, winter depression, because like due to the bad weather, a lot of people feel like that they're depressed, and you know. And then he said to me, hey, if you need to talk to someone, I'm here for you, talk to me. And because the environment grew up back home, like maha cid lala hadlay ma jirto, wax lagu oranayaa war shaqo tago caadi iska dhig, adkay ma jirto mar. Which I think is something good we can learn about from the Western world is, you know, normalize that it is okay that someone, despite how successful they are, despite how, you know, well articulated they are, that sometimes we all need someone to talk to, you know, and despite whether that person may not help you 100%, at least letting someone else know how you're feeling could be part of the healing process, you know.
Okay, so you said talk to somebody, you mentioned the healing process, you mentioned guidance, mentorship, counseling. A lot of things that really help people, like a lot of things that have been normalized in the Western world. Basically, that everybody needs help and you should help people. In our society, we don't focus on that as Somalis. We only focus on like the material needs that somebody needs, right? Like, and if somebody's not doing well health-wise or financially, then wax baa lagu soo ururiyaa waa la siiya markaas, you know, xaaladda markay aad ay u xun tahay. Laakiin qofka markuu liitanay, when you see that they're downward declining, you don't intervene, you know, and early intervention could be really helpful.
Yeah, because the problem is, I think we talked about this the other day, but our Somali people, like when someone achieves something, you know, like that can go in you know, a lot of what we call like the expertise in the academic area, like qofka u baahan afku ku taagaya. Like I believe personally, the more you grow up personally, the more you learn a lot about, or you become expertise in certain area. Your knowledge and ilmi has to make you feel humble, you know, and
do you feel like you should have responsibility then to help others behind you?
That is true, because what is the point of being a aqoonyahan ama qof wax bartay if you are not going to help, you know, another person? And today, in our society, as we have seen the Somali community, you know, qofku markuu wax bartay hebel waa jaamici, and they are the most rare people to meet with, instead of being the opposite, the most available people, qof kastaaba uu wax ka baran karo. And I feel like the lack of mentorship in our community is one of the reasons why we have a lot of high school students who are going to university but who have no idea what they want to do, because they never get the chance to sit with someone who went through that journey.
Yeah.
You know, as we talked about the other day, you know, alhamdulillah, this past summer, I was able to go back home after 2.5 years later due to the COVID-19. And I was living with my sister, and in Hargeisa, I was in a neighborhood with University of Hargeisa. Where I was living was nearby University of Hargeisa. And sometimes when I'm about to catch the bus, I used to meet with students who are coming from University of Hargeisa. And whenever we're having normal conversation, you know, and we talk about, like, when they asked this student, I saw him, you know, he had a text book written about, the title was International Law and Organizations, and I asked him, like, what made you choose, you know, this specific major or faculty? And I asked him, like, do you know, like, who are the major active members who creates the international law? And he said to me, honestly, man, it's just, I met some of my friends who like this major, and I thought maybe I may like it as well, you know? And I was like, I'm sorry, but that's not the best way to choose a major, because what about if you don't like it anymore after you graduate, because it wasn't something that you were passionate about? And I didn't blame the student, but I blamed the system, you know? And that is the other reason in our society, as he said, like, we just talk about mentorship, counseling, you know, normalizing, despite whether you're a woman or a man, you know, reaching out to other people if you need help. The problem is we are missing that role models in our society. And what can we do about it?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Well, what can we do about it? Are you doing something different?
Alhamdulillah, it's honestly one of my biggest plans is to go back home and make a difference as much as I can, you know. And I said, I really want to involve in the government, but I want to change, not the same way of, like, making money out of the government, but I want to at least inspire other people and show them, hey, you know, you can work for the government, you can, you know, be elected member, but your goal has to be to build an institution and a system that could exist with or without you. After I leave, I want to, you know, my goal in the future is, like, let us say, for example, haddaan wasiiro kala noqdo, wasiirka waxbarashada oo kale, my goal is, you know, to build an education system shaqeeya aniga haddaan joogiyo haddaan ka tagaba. That is the goal, so that I could leave other people something that they can build up with.
Yeah.
you know, not the other way. Like a lot of people today, if you tell them, hey, I want to work for the government, they will assume, oh, lacag badan ka qaadanaysaa meesha, you know. And sidaan ognahayna lacag badan lagama sameeyo dowladda, but laakiin habka loo qaataa de waa hab just taking the tax from the local people and using their own personal interest. Marka alhamdulillah anigu like at least I always say I don't even mind haddaan maca dugsi dowladda wax ka dhigo and I educate other people. I feel like I accomplished part of my life. Allah naxariista ayada baa oran jirtay, you know, don't forget where you came from, you know, ha ilaawin bartad ka timid. And actually give me another message of like it's always good to be part of something bigger than yourself. You know, because at the end of today, like I don't want to leave this world, you know, without not making any markers behind, you know. Like haddaad berito la dhimata xal goranaya hebel muxuu ka tegay. But laakiin haddii la dhahdo ugu yaraan 4 qof buu wax baray, I'm happy that at least they have 4 students to learn how to read and write.
But also like past the reading and writing though, you're doing a lot even here in the States, and even when you were at Abaarso and like helping students from Abaarso who are coming to America, getting adjusted to American society. So speak a little bit more about what that type of mentorship and work is looking like.
As we talk about, there are a lot of students from Abaarso School who come to the US, and so many of them are like fresh out of high school. They never, like me, when I was coming to the US, they never been outside of Somaliland. So they came to the US either to start college or finish their 2 last year of high school. And so some of them, like what we do is, you know, we call, I always consider myself as their big brother. So a lot of them, you know, I work with them and I ask them like, hey, do you need help with anything? Some of them, they will ask you, you know, like it's a new environment. Some of them, they go to a big university, and making friends is so hard for them, especially, you know, you can only know if you are an international student in the US, like it's really hard to adjust and join that, you know, friendship circle. So some of them will ask you, hey, you know, like where is the best way? How were you able to meet people? Like should I go to, you know, should I join like campus activities happening on campus? Some of them will ask you, you know, I'm taking this class, but the way the professor is teaching is a way that I never like learned before. What have you done it before? Have you had someone, a professor like this? So I kind of help them like understand like what is the best way to navigate through that kind of college experience. And by the way, I also work with even in my college right now, I'm a mentor for the freshman student, and at the same time I'm also a residential advisor for the freshmen. So I work with them if iyaga cadaanka wan waxaan u ahay mentor la shaqeeyo ka caawiyo, because transition from high school to college is a lot. It's a lot. And in the US, statistically speaking, most majority of students, they drop out between those 2 transitions, you know. A lot of students, they drop out within the first year of freshman, within the first semester of freshman year. Marka ardayda Somaliland waxaan ka caawinaa like we just, they see us as someone that they can relate to because we share a lot, you know. And that is why they feel like they can connect with us more than anybody else in the US. And I feel like, you know, guiding those young kids who are in the US will mean a lot to them. It also means a lot to me when I see, you know, a younger Somali brother and sister achieving what they...
You kind of touched the fact that you want to work a little bit in like higher education and public policy, but speaking a little bit about the goals that you have for the future, what does that look like to you as you're about to enter your senior year of college? Now you got some Princeton education, and then you got some awards at your college too, right?
So last year I won the award of being sophomore student of the year. Especially it was one of the hard times of being a student in the college. It was during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was a lot, you know. I was doing a lot of beside my classes, you know. As we just talked about, I'm a mentor, I'm a residential advisor, I tutor math, you know. I'm also a member of other different clubs on campus. And finally, and I feel like doing all of those things, you know, which takes a lot of time management skills, communication. It allowed me to join a great academic areas like here we are today, Princeton. And I feel like doing all of those things I was doing in college, without them, I wouldn't be able to be here where I am today. And, you know, Somaliland, the qofka midga marka being like jaamacadana Princeton oo kale. When someone who is not like here, who work in Chama, they assume, you know, that you came into here in a different way. But I always show people that I earned to be here. Absolutely. I didn't get it for free. Like a lot of long nights, a lot of long days is what made me come here. And I want to let every Somali kid who is going to school today, if you do what you love doing, I can see you, the future. Your future will be promising. You know, you deserve the bigger tables. If nobody doesn't give you that chance yet, you will have it. And do what you love doing. So that is why, and I feel like hopefully, I don't know if I will come back to Princeton as a full-time graduate student. If I'm done planning, inshallah, I already started part of the application, but I want to go and attend Harvard School of Education since they have what I'm looking for. And I think I have what it takes to get into Harvard as well, inshallah.
You know, there's a lot of Somalis that went from Princeton to Harvard. So, like, you know, you wouldn't be the first and you won't be the last, inshallah.
Inshallah, that's the goal, you know. We don't want to close that door. We want to keep that door open, which is why that's why I always, wherever I go, I'm always like, you know, you have a big responsibility, you know. Always, you know, clear the path for the upcoming young children. And show them the path, you know. If there was no way, make it for them. And make sure that they keep that door open.
So, I think it's really, like, amazing hearing your story and talking to you. Like, literally somebody who wasn't given anything, growing up in Somaliland after the Civil War and growing up through Reconstruction, like, amidst this unrecognized country. A lot of young boys leave Somaliland and they try to, like, tahreeb to go into Europe. So, education and, like, dedication took you this far. With opportunity.
Alhamdulillah, yes. You know, I always say, like, you know, a lot of people can get an opportunity, but what is the point of an opportunity if you were not ready for that? You know, and I know if I want to send a message to the Somali community, especially in the academic area, is, you know, if you have the role of being a teacher, you know, you have one of the most important roles in our society. You're forming and creating the future for a generation. So please hold into that and teach it the best way as you can. Because I feel like dadka igu saamaynta badan maanta noloshayda are teachers, macallimiin bay ahaayeen. You know, a lot of them, like, they told me a lot of things, but maybe at that time I couldn't understand what they meant by, but the more I grew up, it makes sense a lot to me. You know, and like a lot, you know, the other day I was talking to, when I get into Princeton graduate summer program, I reached out to one of my former teachers from high school, and like, he was like, I'm so proud of you, you know, and that is the thing. Like, he told me so many times, hey, you love being part of the academics. If you just keep doing what you're doing, you know, he was like, you could go to some places. You know, and that's the point. I'm like, it could open eyes for a lot of people.
So earlier you said something about every country has its own story. And then when you mentioned your grandmother, you said she told you don't forget where you come from. So when you tell people about where you come from, where you started, what do you tell them, or what is it to you?
So like a lot of people like me, especially young people, you know, when we're studying history, we always start from, like, okay, people ask you where you're from. When I tell them I'm from Somaliland, they will ask you, you're from Somalia, you know. Then I have to explain the history, you know. I have to start from the colonial period, you know, how Somaliland was under the British protectorate, Djibouti was under the French colonial, Somalia was under the Italian colonies, and basically I go into another class of History 101, the scramble of Africa. But I basically tell them, you know, like, what it means is, like, growing up in Somaliland, you know. And
what does it mean to grow up in Somaliland? I'm so curious.
Actually, the more I was growing up in Somaliland, Somaliland was growing up as the way I was growing up, because till today, almost 30 years later, Somaliland hasn't gained any international recognition. And Somaliland have made a lot of progress, but there's always a room for improvement, you know. And if we are not ready for where we're going to go, like, we're not going to go anywhere. And another thing about the government of Somaliland, or the Somaliland as a country, is dal aan dadkiisu dhisani cid ma dhisto, you know. I know, and this is true, you know. If people think the NGOs, you know, international organizations or the other Western world is going to help you and build your nation, no. There is no such as a free lunch.
Yeah.
haddii dadku aan dalkooda dhisan oo aan u shaqaysan cid kuu samayn mayso. sidoo kale waxaan aaminsanahay Somaliland way qalantay la aqoonsada, laakiin waxaan ka jecelahay aqoonsiga in inagu marka hore aasaaskana nolosha dhisno. oo dawladda inaga mas'uuliyad baa naga saaran, caruurteena inay waxbarasho fiican helaan, dadkeena inay caafimaad fiican helaan, wadooyinkeena dhismaan. waxaan aaminsanahay yani haddii dalku aynu dhisano, Soomaali waxay tiraahdaa mahma hugaagu kula barya taga, which basically means like who you are will say Allah about you, or like haddaad meel tagaysade. marka waxaan haddii dadku in arkaynayno dad run ka tahay dalkooda dhistaan, waxa la odhan karayaaba waxbay u qalmayaan. Somaliland oo dhisantaana waxay faa'iido u tahay Soomaaliya oo dhan. anu marka hore sida macallafteed waxaan iska qof iska jecelin qaaradda Afrika oo dhan horumarto. waan aaminsan haddii dadka Afrika jooga ay dhab ka tahay qaaradda dhistaan way dhisan kareen, waayo waxa hubaala sanadada badan ee soo socda barta lagu badbaadaya in Afrika tahay. waayo waxay nagu jira haddii macaan ka hadalno da'yarta Afrika ku nool maanta waa dadka ugu da'da yar bay nahay, khayraadka yaala, hodantinimada taale, laakiin muhiimaddu waxa weeye maskaxda in laga shaqaysiyo oo la soo saaro. marka Somaliland intaan ugu korin way la koraysay. Alhamdulillah, it is a lot better than it was, but like as I said earlier, there's always a room for improvement in hore loo sii socdo.
Oh, sorry, I got really like, I was like, you keep going. So I think the main point of like, I think everything of what you're saying is that everybody has an opportunity and ability to be better and do better. And so what do you want to, but what I wanted to say was also, but alongside that, you brought your American friend with you to Somaliland. Yeah, so also, I want you to explain what Somaliland or South Ukorte, what it means to you. Like, for example, I always remember Karami music and like Doha, like in a Lafariso and stuff. And I used to jam there with my friends, and then I used to drink shah like outside, you know, like. And so if you had to describe home or like South Ukurte, intangible items or like memories like that, what would you describe it as?
Alhamdulillah. Growing in Hargeisa, it was like when I was growing up as a young kid, I never had a video games, but being outside a lot, playing soccer, or if you guys call football, you know, football baan raahday kubadda cagta, laakiin kuwa Mareykan baan raahday soccer. inuu kubadda cagta ciyaaro, caruurta jaarka inaad la ciyaarto, waxay nolol aad xor dareemayso. sidoo kalena deegaanku wax badan buu ku barayay. marka waxaan wax badan ka bartay marka dadka nala jaarka oo kale, marka qof weyn arko, qofka weyn oo ixtiraamaysa oo ka baqanaysa. technology-da waan jecelay, laakiin marka caruurta koraya waxaan jecelay inay dibadda ku koraan, ay noqdaan caruur dibadda arkay, ubadka kale la ciyaara. waayo waxay baraysaa caruurta inay wada ciyaaraan oo kale, waxay ku baraysaa bulshada dhex galaan. qofku wuxuu baranaysaa laan oo kale sidee loo heshiiyaa. وإمكا أودي psychology أو كلا دين كنا قلنا عروتة كوكورة كليجي كوركا أهي مركا عروتة كلو صور ده قالوا المهاس وحنا نقدر المكا حرام كوا كلا هدي وح لوجو سماية وحناقيا وحبعيد لما شهر كرايا. لكن أنا مركا يرى إن أنا هاي قف قلقالي ما أنا هين، لكن وحنا قف كبدا دو تشعل. إن كبدا دو صور عيارن تبدي إسكت جوجو جمعية خميسة جمعة لا يشعلان شرنا فصح بين هاجري خميسة جمعة ولو حرقيسة يدوا دوحة نتجي شرنا بيرهن صوت داوين شرني مركا عضان كوكرا نحن صاحبنا وقش كان يو وايو مركا إنديانا جوجي reerkii soo dhaweeyeen la joogo waqti badan la qaatay inankii aabihii ayaa sanadkii dhaweetay markaan tagay Somaliland iguna yimid.
How was that?
waxa ahayd horta aad baan ugu farxay in qof gurigiisa igu soo dhaweeyay anaguna markaan guriga ku soo dhaweeyay. It really meant a lot to me to host my host family again in Somaliland. We were able to visit, last scale. We were able to go to Berbera, enjoy the beautiful beaches in Berbera. We were able to eat the fresh fish from Berbera. We were also able to see the importance of infrastructure and the development of the DP world dekada berbero aad qurux badnaatay. They really fall in love in Somaliland, and they were like, you know,
drink Anagil.
A little bit. I was afraid.
You didn't want to get them sick?
Yeah, I don't want to get them sick because they had a short period of time. You know, they were heading back to the US, but till today, and actually, fun fact, that was their first time of going to Africa. And Somaliland was the first country they started with visiting. Alhamdulillah, even today, you know, whenever we talk, they were like, we really want to go back again.
Wow.
You know, and I'm happy that, you know, both of them have seen, you know, what Somaliland is, and they were like, you know, whatever we hear from media, because as we know, the Western world, their perspective of the world is shaped by the media, and in Arkan, Sagalka have no goes Marana Sukarkes, but just walking 9 p.m. in Hargeisa downtown with nobody saying anything to us. They were like, wow, this is totally different than we have seen in the media. Actually, I believe today in the US, there are certain cities that you cannot walk around 9 p.m. But in Hargeisa, we were able to do that. Despite, you know, them being foreigner or like not Somalilanders. And they were also able to watch the closing ceremony of Hargeisa International Book Fair. Alhamdulillah, thanks to Dr. Jama Musa Chama, we were able, you know, to get that chance to watch the Daqan, you know, enjoy.
The closing was really nice this year. They had Mina Farah and they had the Daqan dancers and stuff like that. So they had a nice big show.
Yeah, even by myself, I'm a really big fan of Qarami as well. I inshallah listening to the old music, you know, as they always say, all is gold. Nothing can replace them.
Okay, Hayat. So what do you want your last final words to be?
Remarking words will be that each and every one of us in our Somali community, despite where you are, we have a responsibility to make ourselves better and to make better for each and everyone we can, you know. Although you know, even as a Qurba Chok, if you have at least 3 weeks open for your summer, please go back home and contribute as much as you can. Like, we can do a lot. kuwa dalka joogana dadkeena qurbaha ka yimaadaha fogeynine haddii aan luqadda ku hadli karayn bara soo dhaweeya waa dadkeeni aan fursad helin kula noolaadaan laakiin ma aha dad kala shisheeya inay isku soo dhawaanaan jecel anigu qof kasta uu yiraahdo in ka fikirno maxaynu dunida wanaagsan kaga tagi karnaa aad mahadsantiin
Sayid Ali for president. Thank you so much.
kala naqrono meel wana